All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher with Drew Dinsick. It is Christmas. We're going to talk about NBA awards, my favorite thing on planet Earth to talk about. So we're going to dive into Sixth Man of the Year, Most Improved Player, and then MVP, and give out some conference and championship bets as well. Drew, how are you? What's going on?
I mean, I'm well. Like you said, it's Christmas. Even though the idea that we aren't going to talk about NBA awards 100 times in the next month, 5 months is silly, because we are going to talk about this a lot. But it is fun to kind of look into the crystal ball a little bit. And I guess I will just kind of step back and sort of talk a little bit about the process for doing this, because like almost everything that you need to be able to win in the NBA is quantitative. You can get a little bit from actually watching the games and from picking up tendencies in film and like just seeing with the eye test which players are doing, are improving and not doing quite as well. But almost all of an NBA handicap really is quantitative. Futures is a little different, because you do have to step back and find a little bit more qualitative angle in terms of, well, what are these teams? How are they treating the regular season? It's not the same as, because there are teams like the Nets, there are teams like the Warriors. Clippers are an obvious, candidate as well, who they are looking solidly at a playoff run. Whatever the regular season means to them is just avoid the play-in, right? And so there's a little bit of a disconnect between what motivations teams are bringing to the table this year, and I think that plays a huge role, at least in my mind, as to which positions you want to take in the awards markets as we look at the season ready to tip off here.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the awards markets is just study the history of the awards and see what is common year to year in terms of, what people vote on. The most deserving candidate isn't always the winner. Andre Iguodala never won Sixth Man of the Year. Rudy Gobert should just win Defensive Player of the Year every year that he's healthy, basically, but doesn't, because narrative ties into it. So let's jump into Sixth Man of the Year. And I'd say the big things to note with this market: one, points per game is the most significant aspect coming off the bench, but then you also have to play for a winning team. Like talking about like Colin Sexton on the Jazz, if he's coming off the bench, like he's not going to win Sixth Man of the Year, because if you're putting up big points off the bench on a bad team, there's just no narrative for you. So look at this market now. Jordan Poole is the favorite at plus 450. Which I agree that he should be the favorite. Tyler Hero is second at plus 800. I don't agree with that at all, because he's going to start. Then Christian Wood plus 1,000, Malcolm Brogdon plus 1,100, and then you get deeper. Who do you like in this market?
Okay, I have a very, very tough time putting a pin on the right candidate here, and so I'm going to swing for the fences. I like a long shot for our Timberwolves in Jalen Noel. I think he can, he's given us 20 points per 36 minutes last couple of years. I think his role is broadly expanded as sort of the scoring engine for the second unit of this Minnesota Timberwolves team. They, of course, gave up an enormous haul of players and future compensation to bring in Rudy Gobert, and that has really opened the door for Noel to kind of be the guy that is expected to give them 15 to 18 points per game off the bench this season. And I'm partially taking a shot here because there's, to me at least, the favorite looks like we can bet against him a bit. I'll hear your case for Poole, I'm sure, in a minute here, but Jordan Poole, to me, he's being compensated like a starter. He's going to get a lot of games where he is a starter because of load management and the potential for a Klay Thompson injury where Poole is fundamentally just starting for 30 or 40 games this season is not is non-zero chance in my mind. So I think there are possibly voters could look past him just on the basis of pedigree and just how many starts he makes. But I don't have a strong read beyond that, because I think the entire kind of middle class here looks to me like guys that are either incorrectly priced based on role or might actually end up being starters for a balance of the season.
Yeah, there's a lot of these mid-tier guys that I don't really want anything to do with, like Jordan Clarkson, Kevin Love, Bogdan Bogdanovic. They're just not going to be prolific enough, or in Clarkson's case, play on a good enough team. If we're looking at long shots, I would look at And I skew towards the favorites, and we'll get into why. But we're looking at long shots. The one guy I'm interested in is Victor Oladipo at 40-1, just because he clearly has shown a level of production that could win this award previously. He's not the same guy athletically, but I do think that Miami don't really have that many guys who can dribble and score. A lot is going to fall to Butler and Tyler Hero, who I think is going to start. And if Oladipo is coming off the bench, if he's running that second unit, I do think he has a path, but it's a pretty narrow one. I think we have a question from Vaughn, though, about Malcolm Brogdon. I can show this. So Brogdon for sixth man. I think the issue with Brogdon is that it's just the points per game. Like, that's a very crowded perimeter in Boston between Tatum, Brown, Derek White, Marcus Smart. Again, I think Brogdon definitely has a path. I would probably make him the third favorite. But the two guys that I think that this award is going to come down to are Jordan Poole and Christian Wood. Christian Wood has been an absolute usage monster in Dallas in the preseason. I think he's a chance to average 20 and 10 off the bench. They're bringing Dinwiddie and Hardaway off the bench, which hurts Christian Wood because that taps into his usage. But I just think that they don't have any other big man scorer. I think that Wood is going to be closing a lot of games. He has a bit of narrative in that he's taking a lesser role on a contender relative to starting in previous stops. Do worry that it is a bit like he hasn't had the greatest history in terms of his behavior necessary, and maybe he's going to force his way to start at some point, but I think he's going to be prolific. Before I jump into Jordan Poole, any interest in Christian Wood at plus 1,000?
It's interesting price. I make that a little shorter. I would have him in sort of the 8-1, 9-1 range. So a teeny bit of value there for me. But I also agree with you. The fact that Dinwiddie is going to come off of a bench role as well impacts just split the vote kind of a situation. Now, Jordan Clarkson overcame that when he should have probably split the vote and or lost to Joe Ingles, but that's beside the point. I think Christian Wood realistically, I think he fits better as a starter. So he's one of the guys that I crossed off just because the realistic likelihood that he ends up starting for a balance of the season is very high in my mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. I still think Wood is a very big chance for the award just because of the volume he's going to put up scoring wise, but I think Jordan Poole should be the runaway favorite. I think plus 450 is way too long. I make him closer to plus 150.
Oh, wow.
The reason is that it's just very rare that a player of Jordan Poole's skill set and talent is coming off the bench on a contender, no less. He's going to get the scoring volume. He's going to get a lot of assists as well, as really the only other guy on the team outside of Steph who can dribble. Poole, I just think in terms of the concerns about him starting, well, when they're healthy, he's not going to start because you have to start Steph, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond. Those guys are all automatic starts. They're not bringing Wiggins off the bench because of his defense in the starting unit. And then they're not going to play Draymond at center in the regular season. And if that's the case, then you need a big to start, and it's going to be Looney. Maybe it's Wiseman at some point, but I don't think Poole is going to start. So the only way he's going to not qualify for sixth man is that if someone goes down for 40 games, which is possible, but it's also possible for everyone else as well. So I just think that Poole, now he's got this contract. He's probably the guy on the team that has the most to prove in the regular season as well, just because he's not as established as the vet guys. So, I think Poole is going to average 18, 19 a game, 4-5 assists on a potential 1 seed. Meanwhile, I think he's going to be widely acknowledged as well as just the best player that is coming off the bench. So I think Poole is way too long, and he has been my bet. I'm all in Jordan Poole this season. So he's my second favorite awards bet on the board. We're going to briefly mention my favorite one at the end, which we've already talked about.
Let me push back or probe and get a little more of your take on the Warriors broadly, because the Warriors are the hardest team for me to put a point on. Because, again, qualitatively, I don't really know what the vision is for this season for the team. They have a weird split between these unbelievable superstar established personalities and veterans and this young nucleus that they want to be the future of the franchise. Steve Kerr going to be able to balance like the roles and responsibilities between these two groups over the balance of the season. What is motivating Steph Curry this year? He has basically cemented his legacy with the Finals MVP. Just broadly, why do you think the Warriors are realistically going to figure it all out and be the 1 seed or be?
I think they have a lot of downside. Like a lot of the advanced projections hate the Warriors. Like Kevin Pelton's system, which he is skeptical of in this case, has the Warriors around 42 wins, which is obviously way too low. John Hollinger's system is similar. And I do think that like Gary Payton and Otto Porter were really good for that team last year. And they're not around anymore. So now their regular season is going to hinge a lot on whether Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, James Wiseman, whether these guys are going to contribute to winning, which they may not. DiVincenzo helps and I think will. And then there's also just like how much do they care about the regular season? Like probably not that much after they won the title and also went largely all in for the regular season last year before everyone got hurt. So I think there's a lot of questions around the Warriors, but I just think regular season that Stephen Curry just is an automatic top 5 offense unto himself. And I just think there's too much talent for them to, bottom out into a 6 seed or something. I just think that they have a relatively high floor despite some of these projections to get home court, which is probably all they care about. And if they're getting home court, then for the purposes of this discussion, that's going to be enough for Jordan Poole to be on a feel-good enough team to win. I think before we jump into most improved player, I think we have a quick question around Karis LeVert, who, to preempt that coming up, I think LeVert, if he does come off the bench, that he will be a candidate. He is someone who's shown that he can average 17, 18 a game, which might be enough. But at the moment, he's starting, which I don't really understand why he's starting him next to Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, putting a huge load on Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. But if he does come off the bench, I think I would move him into that kind of slightly below Brogdon as maybe a 4th or 5th favorite for the award. But at this point, he's starting like Hero is. So not getting involved until it's confirmed that he will have a bench role. All right, before we get into most improved player, now, please download the Roto World app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. All right, most improved player, which saw a lot of swings last year. It was kind of an interesting award to think about just because I backed Ja Morant preseason at 30-1, but never really believed in it because I always thought that the voters would penalize him for being too good already. In the end, they didn't. A lot of voters did, but he had enough of the share to beat out Garland and DeJounte. I think this is a much more difficult market to price this year. There are no, to me, obvious candidates. Last year, I thought that OG Anunoby should have been favored in the market last year, and it just never happened for OG. But then I think it was pretty predictable that players like Ja and DeJounte were going to take these leaps. But this year, we've got Anthony Edwards as the favorite at plus 900, Tyrese Maxey 12-1, Halliburton 14-1, and then a giant mismatch of players. Is there anyone in this market that you like? And I think there is a guy from Philadelphia.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And it's Tyrese Maxey. And I don't know that I can honestly advocate betting it at the current market prices because it has taken some major steam. He obviously looked very, very good in the preseason. And it actually kind of cemented my thoughts on what we were going to get from him based on the small sample size we had with him playing with James Harden last year. There were only really a handful of games you could point to where you had an engaged kind of, fit-ish James Harden last year. And the kind of key eye-popping, like jumped off the tape, jumped out of the numbers was, oh my gosh, Harden and Maxey are just perfect synergy. Like he absolutely opens up space on the floor for Maxey. He was looking for him. He trusted him to knock down open looks. And it reminded you of some of the best kind of marriages Harden has had with other guards who can make those shots when he was when he was with the Houston Rockets. And, you felt that, okay, if Harden kind of doubles down and invests in this team, in the city and, gets himself in shape, then that should also help launch Maxey up into sort of the stratosphere of all-star. And so for me, you have your presumptive, and we'll get to this, MVP and Joel Embiid on the floor, who is your clear, first team All-NBA candidate, your all-star, in waiting. And there is going to presumably be a second and or third all-star from this Philadelphia team, depending on how many games they win between now and the all-star break. I think Maxey is a guy that can absolutely make that case. He was kind of right in that perfect window that you talk about, like, what do you have to do to get this award? He's got to jump from 15, 16, 17 points per game up into the 20s. To me, with Harden and a full season, that looks likely. I loved what we saw from him. He was one of the only Sixers that I was like, this guy's playing with heart in the postseason last year. When things were down, when they were getting their brains beat in by the Heat at the end of that series, Maxey was still hustling and, playing his heart out. So he's a guy I don't mind going to war with. I bet this at 30-1, 25-1, and stopped there. And it's cruised all the way down into the 15 and 12 range, which to me is closer to fair. But I'm riding with Maxey and the Philadelphia 76ers in a lot of ways this season.
Yep, I don't mind it, particularly at 30-1 to 25-1. Like you, I wouldn't be betting it at 12-1. I think Maxey, he definitely has a path because he's on a team that we both think is going to exceed expectations, and that's the train that you ride to an award like this when you're on a team that does break expectations. He averaged 17.5 points per game last year, so he probably needs to get to at least 22, probably more like 23, and be an all-star to win. When you're looking at this award, the way you start at is who can be a first-time all-star. So Maxey is definitely on that list. Anthony Edwards is on that list, though plus 900 is way too short. Some other guys in that range, like RJ Barrett at 20-1, potentially. Jalen Brunson at 20-1. Some of the guys that I would give out, though, looking at like DeAndre Ayton, who's 35-1. There's a chance that Chris Paul has his minutes and usage reduced after what happened to him in the playoffs, and that they feed Ayton more. I think that's the easiest way for them to change their offense around, is get Ayton more involved, who clearly has the talent to average 23 a game, which would put him, in line for this award. Michael Porter Jr. as well, 25-1. It has all-star talent clearly, but one guy that I'm looking at and have really begun to think about more and more. And to preface this, usually this award doesn't go to second-year players because the improvement is just presumed as natural. Monte Ellis did win it as a second-year player, so it has been done. Desmond Bain as a second-year player got a lot of buzz.
Ooh,
but the guy I'm looking at, who is a second-year player, is Evan Mobley, who's 40-1. And I think that Mobley... I think that probably losing Rookie of the Year might help him in this regard a little bit. I think that Mobley has potential to just be an all-NBA level of player this year and be one of the 15, 20, well, maybe not 15, but 20, 25 best players in the league straight away. He's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. I'd make him third favorite for that award behind Rudy and Bam. And I think that he has the potential to lift his scoring as well on a team that, has a real chance to win 50 games. So I think there is a very good chance that he'll be the most deserving candidate. And I think that the only barrier there would be that he is a second-year player. But I do think that barrier, particularly with Jar winning last year, which was an expected improvement of sorts, even though he was a third-year player, I do think that Mobley is worth a look at 40-1. Any interest in that price, Drew?
I do like it, but there's a second-year player that I have a little bit more interest in.
Is it Josh Giddey?
No. Oh my God, though. If you can get exposure to Josh Giddey to the good, I'm all in. Like, that guy is going to pop this year, surely. I don't know that he makes an all-star team, but there is a guy who plays for the Orlando Magic who I think could make a second-year leap.
Wagner?
Mr. Franz Wagner, 50-1. That tickles me a little bit because I agree with your Evan Mobley take, but I still think that most of what they need from him in Cleveland is going to be defensive, and that's going to be tough for, unless they are really, really convincingly winning games and people are like, hey, best defense in the league, Cleveland. Mobley is the reason why. Like, it's going to take that level of conviction for people to kind of recognize his contributions, whereas Wagner could be the offensive engine that carries an Orlando Magic team to a 200-1 Southeast championship. The path is there. You have a weak set of teams above him. And if we get to the halfway point of the All-Star break in the season, and the Orlando Magic are in the mix for a playoff spot, people are going to be looking at that team like, well, how is this happening? What is it all Paolo Banchero? I mean, he's the presumptive Rookie of the Year, but whoa, Franz Wagner, 24 points a game. Oh my gosh, look at these offensive numbers. Like, there is a path where Wagner gets recognized for his offense in this year. And honestly, I really like the fit with him and Banchero on the floor together. Like, it looks perfect to me.
Yep. No, I like Franz Wagner, and obviously I'm all in Orlando Magic. I've got a lot of Magic to make the play in at plus 1,500.
Nice.
And I do think that he will take a big leap. And I agree at that price. I like it. The only concern would be that there's a surprising amount of usage monsters in Orlando for a team that doesn't project to be a great offense. But between Paolo, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, Fultz is going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Wendell Carter uses more possessions than one would expect. So I do think that he probably is going to have his path blocked to averaging, 24, 25 a game, but certainly he could average 21, 22. And then if you just get some shooting luck, which carries you to 23, 24, then certainly he's worth a look, and he's got the talent. Let's quickly touch on MVP, which is a little bit more, I guess, a liquid market, so maybe less vulnerable than the other awards. But still, you could have gotten Joel Embiid at 70 to 1 at one point last year, and then made a pretty good book from there. So this year, Luka Doncic, as he was last year, is the favorite, which I don't necessarily agree with. He's plus 400, followed by Embiid plus 600, and then Giannis, Durant, Jokic, and Tatum follow. I think we both like Embiid and think he should be the favorite in this market. I think we really need to go into why, because we've talked so much about why we love the Sixers, and he would be the face of that. Is there anyone else in the market, maybe at longer odds, that you would have a dabble in?
MVP'd.
Yeah.
Start. Yeah, just to get the hashtag ready, man. It's happening this year. It writes itself. Like, honestly, like, yes, should the 76ers be more focused on staying healthy and being ready for a playoff run and trying to win a championship? Obviously, yes. But this, last 2 years, Embiid has been chasing this MVP. And this year, with the Sixers likely getting the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference by my numbers, it is his to lose in my mind. This is very similar to the Josh Allen and Buffalo Bills MVP take at the beginning of the season. Sixers most likely to get the 1 seed. East Coast team, votes go that way. Like, there's little in his way, in my opinion. The only thing that would that would threaten it in my mind is if Luka Doncic has a breakout season like we haven't seen since early stages LeBron, and is just blowing up offensive numbers to a degree where he can't be ignored. But even then, I think the Mavericks are more like a 5, 6 seed in the West. So Embiid for my money, and I wouldn't overthink this one.
Okay. Yeah, I think that plus 600 is a tiny bit of value on Embiid. I think it's a big bet. I don't think there are any real big bets in this market for me, as there was with Jordan Poole and sixth man. If we're looking at longer shots, the 2 guys that I would look at would be Stephen Curry at plus 1,400, just because the Warriors do have upside to get the 1 seed. And Curry was on the path to winning last year before going into a strange slump, which I don't think is going to be predictive of what happens this year. And then, I don't love this, I don't like this team, but I do think LeBron James at plus 2,500, just because there's a chance that the Lakers could be good. They're probably not going to be good, but if they somehow got to 50 wins and were a 3 or a 4 seed, then he's LeBron James, and he's going to win the tiebreak versus anyone if it's close, particularly as he inches towards 40. So I don't mind LeBron at plus 2,500. I haven't bet that, but that would be just something to monitor. I think if you see LeBron James get out in the first couple of weeks of the season, if they start poorly and he gets out to 80 to 1, which he did last year, then I wouldn't mind that, just because he is still LeBron James. All right. Just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen in college football, on the NASCAR circuit, and in the Premier League. There is also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome between the Steelers and Dolphins in our Sunday Night 7 contest. And we'll be sure to break that one down later in the week. But it is NBA opening day, so let's talk about some of our favorite futures bets for the conference and the title. Let's start off in the East with the Celtics are plus 275 favorites.
Yeah, not buying that at all. I am very concerned about the Celtics team, particularly their defense in the absence of Robert Williams for hopefully the first half of the season. Do not love that language at all. And yes, you have a young core of guys who should all continue to take steps forward. Jason Tatum is on a Kevin Durant career trajectory. So, presumably he could be, get to a level where he is just automatically going to have the Celtics in contention for a conference title every year by by himself. But with this, change in coach, with the, figuring out things on defense, relying a lot on Al Horford at the center position, particularly early in the season, there are huge questions for me that the Celtics are going to be that dynamic of a team, particularly in the months of October, November, December. So I'm going to take a swing. And I think the Eastern Conference is really going to come down to Philly and the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, to me, this is maybe it's my turn. Right? Everybody else has had a turn kind of being too high on the Brooklyn Nets. And maybe this is my time. That's entirely possible. But the Brooklyn Nets, to me, if healthy, come April, are a really, really tough matchup in a best of 7. And I think the Nets realistically are going to show you ceiling in the regular season when everybody is engaged and they are playing a meaningful opponent. They're going to show you that, oh my gosh, like they are as good as advertised. Durant, Simmons, and Kyrie Irving kind of fit together as pieces if you can put 2 shooters around them. And so assuming Harris is available, assuming Seth Curry is available, assuming you have any other, kind of wrinkle there that you can add to the mix, this is going to be a dynamic team. And I think the fact that they're plus 350 right now is fair. But as the Philadelphia 76ers rise up the rankings, I'm taking them 7-1 now, knowing that I will eventually buy back on some Nets because this will come down to this is my Eastern Conference final right here between the Nets and 76ers. And if I'm counting on Joel Embiid staying healthy throughout a full playoff run, if I'm counting on Doc Rivers winning a tight series, no thanks. So happy to get Nets, and I'll be adding to my stake throughout the season. And basically every time that there's a big high profile Nets game and they look miserable and they get their brains beat in, I'll come on the next day and say, it's time to add a little bit more Nets. It's time to add a little bit more Nets. But ultimately, I think that's your winner of the Eastern Conference.
Wow, the Brooklyn Nets. I can't laugh at it because I went all in on the Nets preseason last year to win the title, thinking that Durant, Harden, and Irving was just unstoppable, and then never got to see the 3 of them take the floor together. I just think that the issue with the Nets is I don't really care about the drama because there's so much upside with the talent, but I just don't think you can play Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton together. They have no bigs. I don't think they're going to be playing Simmons at center necessarily. And if they do, that creates other issues. So if they trade for Miles Turner, which I would love to see, then I would like their team a lot more. They clearly have the ceiling, but my bet would be the Sixers at plus 700. I also don't mind the Bucks at plus 325, but I think that'll drift because they're starting the season without Middleton. So if they get out to plus 450 or something like that, then the Bucks would be a bet on, but the Sixers are the play at 7-1. All right, let's get into the Western Conference, where the Warriors and the Clippers, they share the same title favorite, Western Conference favorite odds at plus 325. Then the Suns at plus 450, which I would not touch. And then Nuggets, Lakers, Grizzlies, Mavs. But the bet that I like the most here is the Minnesota Timberwolves at plus 1,600 in terms of a long shot anyway. Once you get outside that top 4, just think that they have an incredibly high ceiling between Gobert's addition and Edwards getting better. But if I was to place one bet in this market right now, it would be the Nuggets at plus 850. I just think that we saw that their potential when the brief period they had Murray, Gordon, Porter, and Jokic on the floor. I think that Nikola Jokic is still underrated, which is ridiculous because he's won 2 MVPs in a row, but I don't think people put him as close to the Giannis tier as they should. I think that Nikola Jokic, for instance, is better than Kevin Durant at basketball, and I would rather have Nikola Jokic in a playoff series, which I don't think many people would share that sentiment. But I just think that with the talent, with the upside of Murray and Porter, I think that they should be the third favorite. I would have them over the Suns, certainly, behind the Warriors and the Clippers. But who do you like in this market?
This is extremely tough because I agree with you that the value is on the Timberwolves. I bet them 20-1, but this was somewhat of a proxy of expecting them to get or threaten to get the 1 seed. So this is an equity shot, not I realistically like the way that they match up in a playoff series because I don't. I think they are looking over their shoulders squarely at a Warriors type of team, at a Mavericks type of team, and it's not going to be an especially pretty contest if that's your Western Conference final. So this is like a cautious play the Timberwolves, but ready to eject. I don't share your sentiment on the Nuggets, however. Wow. I think the Nuggets are broadly overrated. Like I do not see. Look at that gap. between the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. You're telling me that there's twice as much championship equity with the Nuggets? I don't see that at all. I think those teams are very, very closely rated. And I think in general, people are expecting the Nuggets to just be what they were last year, plus the additions of, these injured players who are coming back. And I hate betting on guys who are coming off of long and serious injuries. I hate counting on Michael Porter Jr. to be healthy for a full season. Like you're asking for a lot, I think. And even beyond that, like the idea that they're going to have their foot on the gas throughout the regular season and that you're going to get same level of play you had from Jokic, I question a little bit, because he may take his foot off the gas a little bit after what happened last year. So for me, this is a Timberwolves play, and this will be, a consistent try to scoop value, because I cannot really look into my crystal ball and tell you who wins the West. There are absolutely in my mind, six true contenders for this title. And health and path are largely going to determine how that goes. So we may talk about Western Conference futures 50 times between now and April. And until I see the playoff bracket, I'm not going to have a strong opinion.
Yeah, the only things I'd recommend is don't bet on the Lakers at plus 900 and don't bet on the Suns at plus 450.
I agree.
Wouldn't be touching the Grizzlies at plus 1,000 either until we see Jaren Jackson fully back. They've lost depth as well. Now, let's get into the title. Where the Celtics are favorites, plus 600, which I don't necessarily agree with. And then the Warriors, Clippers, Bucks, Nets, and Co. Now, I know you don't like my Nuggets, but I would be betting on them at plus 2,000. I just think that, particularly when you're looking at 20-1, like the team clearly has so much upside. Like Nikola Jokic was almost a plus 10 by EPM last year. He's out of his freaking mind. Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., yes, they don't have, I wouldn't be betting on the Nuggets with the health concerns if they were, 12-1, 13-1, but at 20-1, you can more easily ride that upside variance and lose less in the process if you don't get it. So I just think that if Jokic is going to be a plus 9, Murray and Porter plus 3s. I like the addition of KCP in that starting lineup. I think Bones Highland will take a leap as well. I don't really trust or really like Michael Malone that much as a coach, but I just think that Jokic surrounded by Murray, Porter, Gordon, KCP in the playoffs just has as much upside as any team, particularly when they can shorten the rotation and not play as much of the dead wood in the playoffs. I just think that 5 in particular, and you add Bones Highland into that. I really like Bruce Brown as well. A big Bruce Brown guy. Really like that addition. I think he's kind of perfect for that team. So I would look at them. It would be them and then the Sixers at plus 1,500. I would probably rather bet the Sixers though at plus 700 for the East, because I think on average they would probably be underdogs in the finals, just because they would probably be dogs to the Warriors or the Clippers. I think they would on average start favorite against every other team in the West, but so you can math it out from there in terms of what's most likely. It's largely the same title or East, but prefer East there. But who's your favorite bet for the title?
Yeah, I very rarely am getting involved in the title market preseason. And the reason, it's pretty straightforward why, is that you have to have an imbalance in conference to do it, in my mind. You have to have this team is the clear favorite in conference, and therefore like the path to getting to the finals is easier, and therefore there's a little bit of equity to capture there. And I don't see that this year. I think on average, the West has better at the top, worse at the bottom. And on average, the East has just a ton of really competitive teams, kind of, 10, 12 deep there. And so I think, you realistically, the playoffs are going to be somewhat evenly balanced in terms, particularly, once you get to the second round in the West. And so there's not really an obvious, you can capture value on any team, like we have mentioned, the 76ers or the Timberwolves, even at the longer prices that currently exist. I would expect the Celtics are going to be much higher than 6-1 when we get to Christmas. I would expect the Warriors, you can capture better than plus 650 if you feel like they're going to make a repeat run here. Similarly, the Clippers, we would expect load management throughout the balance of the season, probably going in as a lower seed in the Western Conference. So 650 is going to be, drift at times. Similarly, you mentioned the Bucks at 7-1 is going to get bigger. Nets, I would expect to get a little bit bigger. But again, if the Nets do come out and they're playing at their, kind of, if they show you their cards and they are as high of a ceiling team as I expect them to be anytime in the months of November, December, then I could see that one shorting. So net 750 is the only thing I really have my eye on that I think could get shorter. And again, this is all contingent upon the fact that everyone in the space who was handicapping this NBA last year was certain that the Nets were like the best team in the East. Yeah. And then they are all ice cold on them this year. Yep. With a roster that is a little bit more complete in my mind. Yep. And so, I think realistically, if they prove it on the court at any time against elite competition early in the season, that number is going to get shorter.
Yep, they have as much upside as anyone. I do think that if the Celtics do start off poorly, if Al Horford looks older, if they're missing Robert Williams to a severe extent, if the Celtics ever get to double digits to win the title and none of their key guys are out for the year and they're all expected back, within striking distance of the playoffs, then bet on the Celtics. There's still too much talent. Robert Williams, he will come back, we expect, like he does. I think he'll come back around Christmas. So then you've got 4 months of wiggle room before the playoffs to extend out into. So I do think if they drift, then they are a bet. But we'll be talking about that all throughout the season. We'll break down tomorrow the NBA games tomorrow and also get into some NFL. But for now, we are done. So don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. Just quickly, because I mentioned it, don't want to forget it. My favorite bet for the NBA season, Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year, should be even money, maybe even minus 110. So go bet on that, and we will see you tomorrow.